All right, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today on the Investor Evolution podcast. Welcome back for those of you who are returners, and welcome for the new people. Today, I'm very excited to be interviewing a new friend, Nathaniel Hovsepian, and he is an incredible real estate investor. We're going to dive into his journey. He's a former Marine, so we're going to thank him for his service. First of all, thank you for that. And we're going to get into some mindset stuff. We're going to talk about a lot of things today. So I'm really excited. Nathaniel, thank you so much. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here on. I don't know. I forget when you mentioned this is going to drop, but it's a Saturday for us
Yes.
right now that we're recording this. So it's great that we have the ability and the time to be doing this on a Saturday like this.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, so first of all, let's talk about your journey into real estate because I think you've been in it for a while. This is not your first rodeo. You're not new. You've kind of been in this world for a while. So tell us, when you started and catch us up to where you are.
I got my start kind of by happenstance back in 2016 when I sold a condo in Garden Grove, Southern California. I had bought it in 2012. I met my wife, girlfriend at the time, Brittany, at Cal State Long Beach. We were both engineering students, and when we met, I told her like I'm not staying in California. I was like you mentioned, I was a Marine. I had seen parts of the country, and I knew that there was more out there for me. And so she was on board. And so in 2016, when we graduated, we moved to Oklahoma. We sold the condo, and we were going to buy a primary home, a primary residence in Oklahoma, and it was a beautiful property. It was a single family home, a 3 bed, 2 bath, 1,500 square foot, but it was on 7 acres outside, about 25, 30 minutes outside of Oklahoma City. And so it was this, beautiful thing. We had left California with the intent of like spreading our wings, so to speak, and getting more space. Garden Grove is people on top of people. And so this property was amazing. And about a week and a half, 2 weeks before we were supposed to close, she got an engineering job, which she had been looking for about like 4 months at that time, about an hour and a half away. And so it was like, okay, that sucks, but what are we going to do? So we ended up turning that into an investment property. It needed a bunch of work done to it. All this work I was going to do to it myself anyway. So what I did is I literally ceilinged the floor. I did a bunch of yard work, landscaping stuff to clean the property up, and we rented it out, and we held it for a few years as a long-term rental. And then when we moved to South Carolina, we ended up selling it. I wish we hadn't probably, but the journey is the journey, so to speak. So
Right.
that's how I got my start. I After getting that, I kind of fell into wholesaling in a sense. If you want to jump into that.
Yeah, let's talk about wholesaling. So we did the long-term rental, which was great. Got your feet wet. You also did a fix and flip in a sense, right? Or a fix and hold, I
Yeah,
guess.
right.
So
Yeah,
you can have like those two things. So how did you get into wholesaling? I'd love to
yeah,
hear this story.
yeah. So we bought that first property off the MLS, and we had a pretty good realtor who I liked, and we were trying to work with her to buy more investment properties. But at the same time, I'm a bit of a control freak,
Okay.
as a lot of entrepreneurs tend to be, and I didn't like having to go through a realtor,
Mhm.
through another realtor to talk to a seller. And so I started doing some research and found this thing you could do. You can go direct to seller. Okay, how do I do that? So I started sending out mailers with the intent of I'm going to send these mailers out and we're going to start buying more rental properties.
Mhm.
I ended up getting properties that we didn't want to hold as rentals.
Right.
And so, like, okay, what the heck do I do now? I sent these mailers out. People have called. I've negotiated with them. Is there something I can do? And I found that, oh yeah, you can go find another investor and assign the purchase agreement to this other investor, wholesaling. And so, yeah, long story short, I ended up doing it for 7 years. Once you
So
start wholesaling, you just wholesale. Oh yeah.
you had no idea that was a thing, and you just like
I,
stumbled upon it.
yeah, I
I,
like, there's we can get into the mindset and and those types of things, but I've been kind of an action taker my whole life. I learned by doing.
Yeah.
I learned by going and getting my hands dirty and my feet wet, so to speak.
Mhm.
And so I just like, okay, like send out mailers. Okay, send them out. Okay, now what? Okay, answer the phone. Okay, answering the phone. Right. And then
Mhm.
so just learning the steps as I go. And so
Gotcha.
yeah, when I like, wait, what do you do now? Um, yeah, I guess you wholesale. And I think at that time I probably also I went to a real estate meetup, a RIA, a
Mhm.
Real Estate Investors Association meetup in Oklahoma City, and kind of learned some things there as well. But yeah, I
Okay.
was like, okay, wholesale.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, we'll do that. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, so you did that for 7 years now. Did you build a big team? Like, how did you build that out, or is it just you?
The first 4 years or so, it was really, I thought I was doing real estate, and I wasn't really. It was very passive and
Mhm.
very, yeah, I guess passive is the best word. Like I was reacting to things that were happening instead of being proactive and going like, okay, you sent out mailers. Now you just sit there and wait for the phones to ring instead of, okay, what is something else I can be doing to generate some more business?
Gotcha.
Right. So I did a lot of little odd jobs just to kind of fill the time while I was doing real estate.
Okay.
Um, you don't know what you don't know at the time. And I learned a lot of lessons, but like it's all a part of the journey and
Mhm.
learning things along the way. So yeah, I wasn't very active, but I finally got active in like 2020, at end of 2020, 2021. And I had literally at that point I had done direct mail, I had door knocked, I had hung flyers on people's doors, I had done PPC both on Facebook and Google, I
Mhm.
had done SEO, and then I ended up with a cold caller and cold texter, which
Okay.
ultimately led me into sub two. Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. And were
Yeah.
you working engineering through this, or were you kind
Yeah.
of in real estate?
Yeah. All I have engineering wise is a piece of paper that hangs on the wall over there.
Okay.
Um, Brittany did, Brittany was an engineer for 5 years or something like that. 6 years. Yeah. Before she ended up leaving that job after our second son was born
Okay.
and coming to work for the business.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
And then so you came into sub two, so I call it Pace Morby World. I call it Pace Morby World. So you came into
Yeah.
Pace Morby World. How did you learn about Pace? Like, what brought you there?
Yeah, I couldn't tell you how I ended up like Pace came into my universe, so to speak.
Mhm.
That's one thing that he's really good at is getting in front of you and capturing your attention.
Mhm.
Uh, I actually remember it was middle of 2021. I had to make a decision because I had found him. I thought that sub two was a path that I could go down,
Mhm.
and I had another person that I had been in a different coaching program with that was doing their own coaching program that I had like. He was doing remote wholesaling and remote flipping, and I
Mhm.
wanted to be able to be remote and go do, invest in real estate wherever. And so he really, yeah, I really related to what he was doing. And
Yeah.
so I ended up choosing his instead of sub two in
Okay.
2021 and regretted it pretty immediately. Uh, it just wasn't even close to what you get in sub
Okay.
two. But I don't like nothing necessarily super negative about it. I did learn some things. I did
Mhm.
grow from it, from a business standpoint and from a wholesaling standpoint. But just compared to sub two, eh, um, I ended up joining sub two about 9 months later
Got it.
after going through that. Yeah, but
Okay.
yeah, just night and day.
And so, with joining sub two, how did that change your business? What did that do for you? How did that open things up?
Well, yeah, and so it's so tough to just pick one or five specific things because there's so much you get through sub two. I joined sub two to become a better closer. I knew that I was leaving deals on the table and I wasn't serving the people the best I could.
Mhm.
And so I had heard about these daily dials and nightly dials, and how that's where you go to become a real estate salesperson, a real estate closer. And so that was the intent of joining. Besides learning creative finance, like I wanted to add those tools to my tool belt, but I really wanted to figure out the sales piece of
Gotcha.
being a real estate investor. So that's why I joined Subto. Now, all the other things that have come since that are just like, I don't know, icings on. I guess even better than that. Really,
Right.
I found Creighton Bertrand, a personal development coach who I
Mhm.
wouldn't have found otherwise. I found Jesse Stanton, our business coach, who I wouldn't have found otherwise. I've like pretty all our friends at this point, outside of the local ones, and even some of the local ones we've met through Sub too. Like,
Wow.
so
That's
it's just yeah,
awesome.
it's a there's so many things. Yeah.
That's awesome. And so now I think you've kind of had that shift from the wholesaling. Were you wholesaling and fix and flipping at as along the
Yeah, and
way?
we did buy a couple rentals here and there, and we did a couple wraps, so we hold a couple notes as well, but it was mainly wholesaling with a couple flips a year.
Okay, gotcha. And so now it sounds like we're maybe pivoting and shifting a little bit to a
Yeah,
different.
completely.
Yeah, tell me about that.
Yeah, it was it was a big mindset shift,
Uh-huh.
right? We had this coaching program with Creighton in early middle of 2023.
Okay.
And at the end of that, we realized, Brittany had joined the company at this point, not excited about her role in the company
Okay.
because she doesn't want to be on the phones. She doesn't want to be talking to sellers or buyers, really.
Yeah.
She's okay talking to like title companies and things like that, but that's not her strong suit. It's not her, it could be her strong suit, but it's not her like desire,
Yeah.
right? And in a wholesaling company, like you need people on the phones.
Yeah.
Like that's what drives your business.
Yeah.
And so after doing this coaching program, we kind of stopped and said, okay, this isn't what we both want to be doing, what is something that we do want to be doing? So
Mhm.
we decided to stop and focus more on flipping. So I only mocked up contracts that we thought would be a good flip for us. And
Mhm.
then we also opened up to let's talk to wholesalers and let's start buying from wholesalers as well. So we did
Perfect.
that for 6 months. And then at 6 months, we went back and we said, okay, is this what we want to be doing? Why did we get into real estate in the first place? Because every house we sold, we made a bunch of money, but it also just like crushed me a little bit
Mhm.
because we got into real estate to buy properties and to
Mhm.
hold them forever and to like, help with affordable housing, put people in houses that they otherwise couldn't afford and that they're going to love, they're going to call their home. And like we did that a little bit with the flipping because we would go rehab a property and make it beautiful. And then,
Mhm.
people would tell me at the closing table, like, man, you did such an amazing job. I'm so excited to move my family in this house. And
Yeah.
that's great. But it's like, we went and we figured out how to buy the property. We figured out how to rehab the property. And this took, 3 to 4 months or whatever. And then we're just going to sell it,
Right. Right.
and so at the end of last year, 2023, we stopped everything. I didn't talk to a seller. Um, well, I still talk to sellers every now and then, but
Mhm.
I didn't talk to a seller for 3 months. We didn't underwrite a deal for like 4 months at the beginning of this year because we were going through the coaching program with Jesse. We were putting all these different pieces and SOPs and things in place. So essentially, we were building a machine to be able to go out and buy houses, and then we turned on the machine in like May of this year.
Okay.
And so it's crazy because like from 2016 to the beginning of 2024, I
Mhm.
was talking to sellers, I was underwriting and comping and all these things, and then just go, no, stop.
Yeah.
Like, got to figure this piece out. This
Okay.
is what gets you where you want to go. And so, yeah, it was, I
Okay.
think that answered your
Yeah,
question.
no, no, that's awesome. Okay, and I want to talk about two things because you've talked about two different coaches. So Creighton is his name, um,
Yep.
and then Jesse. And so Creighton was more of a life coach. Was he a business coach? Kind of tell me about that and like how that really helped you to pivot.
Yeah.
Obviously, we kind of talked about kind of really looking at what you guys were doing. But what other impacts has it made on your business even today? Because I think like I was watching one of your podcasts and you were talking about like this is a journey. This is a lifelong thing. This is not a 6 week, 12-week program.
Yeah.
This is
Yeah.
ongoing.
That might have been the Creighton one. Yeah. That you
Yeah.
saw. Then that, Oh yeah, the
Yeah.
shirt. Yeah, shirtless. Yeah, while Creighton has absolutely has the ability to move you from point A to point B or C or beyond in your business, it is more of a holistic, whole life kind of
Mhm.
program. You're learning skills and traits and characteristics and things that you can apply everywhere
Mhm.
in your life. And it's more about, you know, getting value out of today and every single day than it is about getting you like the quote unquote result that you want, right? So,
Mhm.
I mean, before his, I had him on my podcast. We had talked about like, hey, what are your like talking points, so to speak? What do you want to like sell about yourself? And he's like, I can't say, hey, come to my coaching program and I'll get you to $10,000 a year.
Mhm.
Well, I can do that. That's not what it's about,
Yeah.
right? And so it I took away from Creighton just like daily habits,
Okay.
mindfulness techniques, right? Like be knowing how to look back on our week, our month, our quarter, our year and go, okay, what did we do here that was great? What did we do here that wasn't great?
Mhm.
What did we do here that we liked? What did we do here that we don't like? And how do we iterate and transition and going forward?
Mhm.
So I would have never got like we wouldn't have gone into Jesse's program, coaching program, and we wouldn't be with Jesse right now if we hadn't gone through Creighton because he
Right.
opened up our eyes to like, oh man, you gotta sometimes paying for somebody's time and experience and expertise, like
Mhm.
that's where you should be going. And so at the end of last year, Brittany and I were both talking, okay, we have this money set aside for education, right? For training.
Mhm.
Where are we going with this? And
Yeah.
thankfully, we decided to go with Jesse because I was leaning towards more sales training, and
Okay.
like, yeah. So no, thank you. Yeah, but, yeah.
Okay. So and you and Brittany, so together you guys have built this business and have worked together. You did, and was the coaching with Creighton um together as well? Like you guys did that together?
In a sense, we never. I don't think we ever had a together call.
Okay.
Most of the calls I was on with him one on one, and then I would bring back, hey, this is what we talked about, and then he gave us, especially for the first like 6 to 8 weeks, he'd give you homework
Okay, sure.
every week, and so it was like, oh, we'd go through these exercises together and work on it together. She definitely went and had a couple calls one on one with him, so he could kind
Okay.
of see where she was at, like, get her perspective on what we had been doing and things
Yeah.
like that, and then I do, if I'm remembering correctly, it was like I think it was 12 weeks, and then it was 8 weeks where you're like really doing very intentional things that he had set aside, 8 or 10, and then the last couple weeks were okay. Now where are you at in your business? Let's talk about that. Let's talk about how the week was and what we can do to iterate
Okay.
going
Oh,
forward.
gotcha.
And in true Creighton sense, it always just was like it was a little drinking from a fire hose because he just has so much value and knowledge. Like, okay, here's how you could tweak this wording in your head to get more value out of it. Yeah,
Oh,
just
okay, cool. I love that. Okay, so that kind of started that shift and that pivot. And obviously, you guys were thinking like, we need to buy properties. So, how does Jesse's program come into that? And how has that helped you kind of see it bigger or kind of move you forward?
yeah. We met Jesse and we went into Jesse's coaching program with the intent of buying properties.
Mhm.
Here's a guy here's a guy who's figured out how to buy properties
Mhm.
and is willing to give his knowledge and value.
Yeah.
We've taken a lot outside of that from Jesse. Just more mindset stuff, more
Mhm.
leadership stuff.
Mhm.
Being a CEO and being a business owner rather than like a business operator.
Yeah.
We still find ourselves working in the business. Of course, starting out, you're going to be doing that, but I'm doing a lot more working on the business than I was for sure, especially as a wholesaler.
Yeah.
But I had met Jesse maybe 6 months prior to joining his coaching program, and I had five or so people that were either part of the Growth Co or had been through the Growth Co on my podcast, and just like seeing or hearing the growth, the mindset things that these people were talking about, like, okay, this is on the very short list of programs that we want to get into.
Gotcha.
So that's why we joined it with the intent of how do we actually start with the end in mind of buying houses, figure that out. Yeah.
And I think what's cool about your journey is, you started in one thing and you've been able to shift, you've been able to pivot, you've been able to grow. And I think what's awesome about that is, sometimes we just start doing the thing. And it's not always what we intended or maybe what we think about, but it's just what you get started at. And it's what's so awesome is that it's okay to shift. It's okay to change. It's okay to take that step back and stop your funnels and stop your marketing and just figure
Yeah.
out where you need to be, where you want to be, and where you want to grow to. So for 2024, we've got almost a quarter ish, a little bit longer than that
Yeah.
left. Um,
Yeah.
4 months. What are your goals moving forward for this year? And where do you see your business really, really growing?
We're trying to get by moving into Q4 to one property purchased a week to hold as co-living, midterm, short-term, or even we've now opened up our minds a little bit more to long-term rentals.
Okay.
So uh, when we started along this buying journey, what we were seeing was like, oh, there's nothing out there that's going to cash flow as a long-term rental. And so we just were focusing on those other three, the co-living and the short-term and midterms. And now it's like, okay, we've been doing this for 4.5 months now, and we've bought some properties. How do we, maybe add some long-term rentals in there? And so we're figuring out some things right now outside of creative real estate,
Mhm.
because most of the properties that we see, all of the properties that we see that are creative deals, they just don't cash flow as long-term rentals.
Yeah.
That's why we started with those other ones. So it's like, okay, well, maybe we can cherry pick some cash ones that we can, figure out how to rehab. They have to be really big value adds,
Mhm.
and then we can use a DSCR product on the back end to be able to finance everything out and hold it as a long-term rental. So we're trying to figure out ways to within real estate diversify, and we have done that to a sense that we buy across the nation. So we have diversification from regions and states, and we have diversification from the few different hold strategies. Now we're adding, okay, we're diversifying as far as
Mhm.
the way we're buying it as well too. But
Right.
I did want to touch on the you mentioned the trying something and it may not work. One thing that I like to pat myself on the back for, and I didn't know it at the time, but I said that I did all these different marketing channels. Like I gave everyone 6 months.
Mhm.
And I see a lot of people that will come into it and they're going, okay, I'm going to do direct to seller. And they try it for 2 weeks and they're like, oh, I didn't get a deal. Okay, well, I'm going to do direct to agent. Okay. And oh, I'm going to be a TC. Oh, I'm going to go Gator, like, do. And they never give enough time to build the skills, build the systems, build the processes, and really see if that's even something they wanted to do.
Mhm.
Like, yeah, you can find out pretty quickly that cold calling's not for you, right? If you just cold call for 8 hours a day for a week, if that's not for you, you're gonna know it.
Mhm.
Um, but doing direct to seller and only giving it 2 weeks and giving up after that because you didn't get a deal, like you haven't learned enough yet. You
Yeah.
got to give yourself at least 3 months. I'd like to say 6 months because like there it's called a lead cycle. Like there's a cycle of these leads and it takes time for things to start funneling in, and the follow-up sequences and things like that. So like if you haven't given yourself 3 months, like you haven't given yourself an opportunity to get a deal yet,
Yeah. For
right?
sure.
So you've given up way before. Yeah, so I just wanted to make sure that I
No,
mentioned
no,
that.
and I appreciate that because it is so. One of the coaching things that I'm in, I had talked with him about, okay, well, this is how I've raised capital and I want to work on this. And he's like, well, have you ever done that? And I was like, no, I haven't raised capital from most people. He's like, well, why would you switch? Like dive deep here. And then once you have that machine rolling, then you can, switch over here. And it was that
Yeah,
like light bulb moment of, oh, yeah, like, we think we need to diversify and, get all these different lead sources. But you're right. Like you do need to give it that 3 or 6 months, whatever you're trying, for that very reason, because you're going to get better. You're going to learn more. You're going to figure out, yes, no, maybe so. This is what I want to do. And you can't do it so quickly.
Yeah.
I 100% agree with that. So I thank you for clarifying that. I think that does make a huge difference. So as you're pivoting with the long-term rentals, how has that changed your strategy? So are we going more to the wholesalers, or are you kind of going back to them and looking
Yeah, we're
for
doing all wholesaler outreach, I guess is maybe the
well,
best. Starting back in May, which it's only been 4 months, and I've even been hesitant to make a it's not a pivot, but make a little adjustments
mhm,
because it's only been 4 months at this point, and I do feel that starting to look at cash is taking away from the creative stuff that we're looking at. But we've built a little bit of a system. I mean, we built a lot of a system around the creative to where we feel like we can start to dedicate a little bit of time and at least see if this is an option
mhm,
cash wise. But yeah, we're doing all wholesaler. The wholesalers send our operations manager leads. She underwrites them. She escalates the ones that kind of pencil out to Brittany. They powwow about it. And the ones that look like good opportunities, Joanna, our operations manager, handles everything else essentially, like getting contractors, property managers, realtors, anything that's needed for us to make a decision and go, hey, wholesaler, Mr. and Mrs. Wholesaler, like we want this property. What do we got to do?
mhm, mhm.
So Joanna's like just, what is it, Johnny on the spot, like kind of a
Uh,
thing. Yeah.
nice.
Yeah.
Awesome. And for you, is there in your process for acquiring, is do you have any areas that need kind of fine tuning? Is there any bottlenecks in your business? Or sounds like with the midterms and the creative deals, you've got that system rolling. But is there things that you're working on right now to like fine tune that a little bit more?
Yeah. I wouldn't say fine tuned, but grow,
Mm,
right? So from our perspective, there's two things that you need to buy investment properties. You need a deal, which we get from wholesalers, and
mhm,
you need capital to buy the deal,
mhm,
money,
right.
right? Which we get from equity partners. So I'm working on the partnership side of things, finding more people that want to buy real estate, either don't have the time or the knowledge or whatever, they
Mhm,
just want to be passive with it,
yeah,
and creating those relationships and nurturing those relationships. So when we do find the deals that pencil out, I have people that I can go to and say, hey, look, this fits your criteria for a
mhm,
buy. So we're at the point right now where we have more of number two and less of number one. So it's like
okay,
this constant balancing act of
right.
you get a bunch of deals in and then you don't have the money for them,
Nope.
and then you have a bunch of money.
And I
Yeah,
see
it's a trick.
I see that seesaw in everybody's kind of business. Sometimes they're like, "Oh my gosh, like I need deals so I can like offload this capital and get these people rolling."
Yeah.
And then you're like, "Oh man, now I have all these deals and nothing." So that definitely happens. Okay, well, I love what you're doing. I think this is fantastic, and I love the diversification within real estate. I think that is like the greatest key,
Yeah.
is having these different opportunities. Is there one of those exit strategies, the long term, the midterm, the short term, um, or a fix and flip, I guess? Like, which one do you love the most? Which one is your favorite?
Man, that's tough.
Mhm.
Um,
They all have their
we
pros and
haven't,
cons, right?
yeah, we haven't done, so we've been very picky with the short terms.
Okay.
So we haven't done a short term rental yet because we're looking for very vacation
Mhm.
like short-term rentals
Yeah.
where we don't want to just buy a house and put it up on Airbnb in any city in the country and say, oh, it's a short-term rental, even though they make money, right?
Right.
That's not what we're interested in. We're interested in like a mountain that people are going to go to, throughout the year and vacation, or Orlando or places like that where people are going and having a vacation experience, and we can create an experience around the house as
Mhm.
well.
Right.
Um, so I would say that when that time comes, that one's going to probably be my preferred because,
Okay.
I want to buy vacation rentals for us as well.
Oh,
Um, but the co-living has a kind of a special place in my
mhm,
heart because I feel like I'm providing I don't feel like we are providing
mhm.
a service to these
Yeah.
these people, whether it be lower income people that are just trying to make ends meet, young professionals or students, right? That
Mhm,
may not necessarily be lower income, but just lower needs, and they don't need a house, right?
mhm.
And so we're providing that opportunity for them as well. Um, and then like from a from an investor standpoint, long-term rentals are just the most safest kind of riskiest or least risky
Right.
play. So like
Right.
they all have their it's tough for me to answer that question. They all
Yep.
have their kind of special place. Like, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I know, and I get it. And I love. And are there certain markets that, for your co-living that you're working in?
No.
Okay.
So we buy nationwide minus a handful of states, California, New York, right? The less landlord friendly states.
Yeah.
We just take as properties come in and the numbers look all right. We go, okay, what does this market dictate? What's the
Mhm,
best use for this property? Most major cities, most bigger cities, co-living is needed,
mhm,
right? There's people that live in cities that they're the workers, they're the backbone of that city, and they need places to stay,
mhm.
right? Especially single people, single men a lot of
Yeah.
the time.
Mhm.
They're just working, and I was just talking to somebody yesterday. Ski towns
Oh,
is
yeah.
then yeah they need a place to stay, and they don't. There's just not enough housing for them, and so a rent by the room situation is pretty an ideal solution to that problem.
Yeah. No, that's a great idea. Well, I live in Colorado, so I was like, "Oh, yeah, there's lots of places that I could work for here." So,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
that's awesome. Um, let's so you're a family man, so you're married, you've got 2 boys, and how old are they?
We have a 3.5 year old. Oh yeah, he's pretty right at 3.5. An almost 2 year old. He'll be 2 in a month, and then a negative 1 month old. So
Oh, okay.
we're having our third, yeah, in a month. Yeah,
One on the
yeah.
way.
So
Okay.
we'll have three under four very, very soon.
Okay. How have you managed all your roles, right? Husband, father, real estate investor, property manager, CEO. Like how do you feel like you've been able to, I don't like the word balance because there isn't, but kind of keep in harmony with all those different roles?
I have notepads,
Uh-huh.
many of them, going at any given time, and a very detailed Google Calendar.
Okay.
And so the Google Calendar is shared between Brittany and I
Mhm.
because at any given moment there's one of us or both of us with the kids,
Mhm.
excuse me, and there's one of us working.
Mhm.
There's only a couple little windows in the day where we're both able to work before and after the kids are awake, and there's 1 hour that we have right now where both kids are, which is actually currently happening at the
Oh,
moment.
they're napping.
Both kids are one's napping and one's on quiet time.
Okay.
So I have a calendar that overwhelms and intimidates a lot of people and stresses people out because it uh, when the day prior I go through and I fill out that the next day. Well, we
Okay.
fill it out together, um, but it's color coded, and so I have Nathaniel things on there, personal Nathaniel things. I have Nathaniel things like business Nathaniel things. We have both for Brittany as well, and then we have family things. And so whenever there's a Nathaniel during the kids' waking hour business thing, it's Brittany parenting.
Mhm.
Whenever there's a Brittany working thing, it's Nathaniel parenting,
Right.
right? And so it by seeing those, when I see a Brittany color, I go, oh, I get to be dad right now.
Uh-huh.
And so I agree in a sense that like work life balance isn't a thing
Mhm.
for most entrepreneurs, but because Brittany and I share that, the entrepreneurial role, we we're fortunate that we get to kind of balance it. So in any given day, I spend 2 to 5 hours with the kids,
Right. Nice.
right? And there's still 12 hours of work getting done between the two of us,
Right.
right?
Well,
But just depends on, like, my notepad, what's on the notepad, like what are our, between the two of us, the night before I go to my Google Calendar and I go, okay, there's these many calls that are already set up, whatever they are. We have these meetings that are set in stone throughout the day, but now we have 4 hours that I go from this notepad. Okay, what's the first thing on the menu? Okay, put it into that slot. How long is that going to take? Put it in that slot, right?
okay.
And we just fill it out. And so we try to leave a little bit of like white space, because there's typically in any given day you have the closing attorney needs something. Okay, be able to fill it in, right? So while it's pretty set in stone, the calendar, like, as entrepreneurs, as investors, as parents, you got to be really adaptable. And so that's something that I have learned to become better at and still working on. I'm still working on, because I habitually not been the most adaptable person. I'm like pretty rigid. That's maybe a little bit of the Marine Corps in me, like, be here at this time, do this thing. Like,
Right.
yeah,
Right.
yeah,
Right. No, I love that. And with the two of you working side by side and taking those times, how has that affected your relationship? How have you guys managed that to get everything done, get all the stuff with the kids that need to be done, and how have you felt like that has impacted things with you guys?
I would say for the better. Um, it is a challenge though, because we're both focused on those two, the business and the kids. A lot of the time, the us gets pushed to the back burner, so to speak. And that's something that we are iterating as we go forward. Like, how do we have a weekly thing for just the two of us? How do we have, even if it's just 10 or 15 minutes a day, where it's just like, okay, we're not talking about business. We're not going to talk about the kids. Like, sometimes it's just sitting there with each other kind of quietly, like, okay,
Yeah.
well, we don't really have much else to talk about at the moment. So let's just
Right.
be enjoy each other's company, right?
And that
But
is kind of a
um,
phase of life, right? You're just in both
yeah,
of those things right now, so makes sense.
yeah,
Makes sense.
yeah. I've said it on my podcast a lot, and it's, I relate it to the health, many times, but I relate it to my kids and my wife. Like, I can be so focused on building this $1 million business, and I build this business and it takes me 10 to 15 years, and now I'm done. I'm like, okay, I'm finally done with the business. And like, my kids don't know me,
Yeah.
or I'm so out of shape that I can't bend down and tie my shoes, right? Or the relationship with my wife is, we're strangers. What was the point of building this business?
Right.
Right? If I'm not able to take value today and be happy and present with my kids and my wife and myself today, you might as well not be building a business. That's my opinion. Not everybody shares that opinion, but
No, I mean, I think, right, you think about, well, when I get to that stage, then I will be whatever. Well,
yeah,
if you're always waiting for that stage, it is always in the future and you're never enjoying it. And,
yeah,
and being present in the future, or being present in the current environment is so important, right? I mean, your
yeah,
kids are little, they're, you know, the things that they're learning and doing and growing into right now is such a short phase. And if you're 100% focused on your business, you're going to miss that. And so
yeah,
I think it's fantastic that you guys have this dance that you do each day of working together and flowing through the business and through the family, and it's what you guys
yeah.
do. Was this something that came about through those coaching calls, like to time block things, and or is this something that you guys have kind of been doing for a while?
I think the time blocking got much better and color coded after our time with Crate.
Uh-huh.
Um, and the color coding, I think, was something that was like, no, you should be putting these things on your calendar, that way they cannot be interrupted with the other things, right? Like, I was I was exercising and I was journaling and reading and meditating, all these things before, but putting it on the calendar and being more intentional with them. It's like, no, 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 you put that you're going to exercise at this time. Like that means that you can't take a call then, right? It
Mhm.
also means that I can't, like, I'm not going to be with the kids end up exercising with me, but right, like it means that you can't be playing bingo with them or whatever,
Yeah.
right? So there's, making sure that all those things get hit. Like Creighton mentioned, he wants to look at his calendar and see a rainbow,
Mhm.
right? I want to see all the colors, and maybe like the Brittany and Nathaniel color, it doesn't happen every day. Maybe it only happens once a week, right? And maybe some people it only happens once a month. But if I were to zoom out and I look at my week or my month, I better see that purple or whatever that color is.
Right.
Otherwise, I got to figure out how to put it in there. So I think that the time blocking has been a thing for me, but not with the intentionality and I don't want to say rigidity, but rigidity that we've put in place since. Yeah, and it's still one of those things that like, how can we do better?
Yeah,
How
for
can we
sure.
do better?
That's something you're always going to iterate, I think, because things come,
Yeah,
right? But I like the idea that in that discipline there is freedom, right? Like like this is my exercise time, like this is what I'm doing. These are my call
yeah,
times. This is what I'm doing. This is my family time. I'm not sacrificing that for anything, right? And I think when you set those boundaries now, as things grow, as you scale, as things with kids get busier, once they're in sports and all the activities, and you're having that ability to really set aside the time and you keep those boundaries firm, it's going to be better for everybody. So
yeah,
I think that's fantastic. I see that you're doing a lot of things in the community. And so you have a podcast, you have a business, you have a family, you have a wife. I know there's some other things that you're doing to help other entrepreneurs and other real estate investors. I think you have a call on is it Thursdays, Helping Hands or something. Okay,
yeah,
tell us about
yeah.
that. Like, and tell me how that came about.
Yeah, I so Brittany mentioned this a while back, and Jesse did as well, is that I have a tendency to just be a bit of a yes man in a sense that like, hey, can we hop on a call? I have this question. Yeah, sure, let's hop on a call, right? And so that can drain the day very quickly and can drain me very quickly as well. And while I still do that a little bit, Helping Hands Hour came about as like, oh, this is perfect for this hour,
Mhm.
right, of time. I've set aside an hour a week, and part of me wants to make it 2 hours a week and have two different times, but that's the yes man of me.
Well,
Like when I'm networking with people and I'm meeting people online and through different forums, and I'm having these conversations, and I say, oh yeah, they say, hey, can I jump on a call and talk about this? Like, no, come and jump on the Helping Hands Hour,
mhm.
because not only can I help you, but then the other people that are there are almost always running into the similar issues. And
Well,
so by taking 15 minutes to talk to you in front of these other people, now I've been able to take that 15 minutes, and instead of allocating it 10 different times, I've allocated it one time to the 10 different people,
yeah,
right? And so that was like, it's Thursdays at noon, which I don't know if that's the best time, but like you can't know the best time. You just
yeah,
have to do it,
yep,
right? And so I just did it. What I've also found is it does weed people out too. That
yeah,
might just be a time suck.
yeah,
I go, hey, like this is perfect. Here's the time. Okay, I'll be there. And then sure enough, you don't see them there.
right,
It wasn't that important. Hopefully they found I mean, and maybe that's it, that they just found the answer they needed before
mhm,
then. And if it's something that's pressing, like, hey, I'm talking to I don't know what I keep trying to struggle to come up with an example right now, but like it can't wait till Thursday. Okay, let's see if we can figure it out. Right. I just want to help people.
mhm,
Essentially, that's what that was born, is Helping Hands Hour. I thought it was I don't know. I think the name Helping Hands Hour came from, I was looking for like a logo or a picture that I could make a post from, and it was
mhm.
two people, like one grabbing the other
Oh,
one
wow.
and lifting them up. I was like, oh, helping hands. Like, okay, sweet. Yeah. Yeah.
No, and I think that's good, and right, like, I mean, and you have a lot of experience, right? You have a lot of knowledge to be able to help people, especially, whether they're wholesalers or, people who are cold calling and that,
Yeah.
or transitioning into the buying, the holding, and doing that. So you have a lot of experience. It's so great to be able to turn around and help someone else. And as Jesse always talks about, right, it's that teach to learn, right? So not only is it helping them, but it's also solidifying it in your brain. And maybe that
Yeah.
they have a question that you're like, oh, that's a good question. I don't quite know.
Uh-huh.
Let's brainstorm it. Let's think about it together. Let's work it out together. And what a great opportunity that is for all of us to be working together, growing together, and helping each other. And I think that's a great example. And, one of the big things with our community is giving back, right? And being that go-giver and helping, providing value. So I think it's fantastic that you're able to provide that as a way to help others and to give back. Is there anything else that you feel like has been instrumental in your journey that we didn't touch on that you're like, oh, if I could help anyone, this is the one thing, or is there
Yeah.
something along that lines?
Well, I talked about we talked about the action thing and like going out and taking action, and that's all well and good, but the mindset stuff, if you're not in the right place with that, going out and taking action, you're going to get burnt out because you're not going to get more than likely you're not going to get a deal that first day,
Yeah,
week,
for sure.
month, right? How many people I talked to that like it took me 6 months, it took me a year. I've
Mhm.
talked to people that like they've been at it for 2 years and haven't gotten a deal still. And it's not like they weren't like me, like, oh, I sent out some mailers, we'll see who calls. They're talking to agents or sellers for an hour or 2 hours a day,
Mhm.
and they haven't gotten a deal yet. But they like have this very clear vision of where they want to be, and they know that they have to keep putting in the action because the action compounds,
Yeah.
right? The big thing for me that I struggled with depression after I got out of the Marine Corps. I did some things that you shouldn't do, self-medicating wise, and I still have issues like that. But a couple months back, I listened to The Gap and the Gain,
Mhm.
and holy moly,
Sure.
that that little switch that you can flip from going, I'm not where I want to be, to look at where I've come from is an incredible, it just is incredible,
Mhm.
right? I'm not where I want to be. By any means are we where we want to be. And like you mentioned earlier, like once you set a goal, you get to the goal, it's like, okay, well, what's the next goal now?
Mhm.
Right? You can always create a new gap. But to be able to look back a week, a month, 3 months, a year ago and go, look at where we came from, right?
Mhm.
I like, man, that freaking contract just fell out, and I did so much work to get that contract, and now I'm going to be depressed about it because in order for me to get to my big goal, I need more contracts that go through. Oh, sad. Instead of doing that, like, okay, be sad for a second, but now let's look and see what all we learned. Let's see
Mhm.
what all we've gained from it, right? Let's look back and see, man, 2 months ago, 3 months ago, like I didn't own any properties. Now I own one or five or whatever.
Mhm.
Or 3 months ago, I had never even talked to a seller before, and I was intimidated and I was so frightened. And now I don't have any problem picking up. I don't even sweat anymore when I talk to sellers,
Right.
right?
Right.
So just being able to look back and say, look at all I've gained.
Mhm.
You can do that in every aspect of your life,
Yeah,
right?
for
Like,
sure.
I still can't do 20 pull-ups, but I can do seven,
Right. Right.
right? A month ago I couldn't do one. So like, yeah, that's a
Well,
big, I think that's a big one.
yeah, I think my mindset is huge in all of this. And they say your business will never outgrow you or grow past you, whatever that saying is.
Yeah.
What are
Yeah.
what are some of the things? So obviously you've done coaching, which is fantastic, and really taking that investment into yourself is huge. What other ways do you invest in yourself? What other things? What other books? If you got book recommendations, I always have a list. I wrote down a couple from your podcast
Yeah. Yeah.
written.
Yeah.
So what are
Uh,
those things for you?
yeah. Okay. So books wise, definitely, I think The Gap and the Gain
Mhm.
is potentially the one that's impacted me the most, at least lately.
Sure.
Um, the Law of Attraction, I know it's tough for people to get through because it's a little, it's a little woo wooey,
I
and
get
the
that.
way that it's written is a little, it's different. But that thing is real. And if you apply those principles and you really are focused on that, the law of attraction is a really solid one. As far as investing goes, right? You know those Rich Dad Poor Dad, Cash Flow Quadrant. I personally, I recommend to anybody getting started in investing or like financial literacy, The Richest Man in Babylon.
Okay.
It's one of my, I like, if you have a younger, like a teen, kind of just give it to them 10, 11, 12, right? When they can read and they can understand, I think that's just, it's such a solid foundational book for setting yourself up for financial literacy. Like,
Okay.
I don't, yeah, I don't want to teach too much about it. As far as like meditating, I I spend the first little bit of my day meditating, giving thanks as many times as I can throughout the day. That's another thing that's like a gap in the game kind of a mental thing, is like, yeah, we're not where we want to be, but what can I be grateful for right now? And the most important time, like you want to do it always because you're building that habit,
Yeah.
right? And the more that we give thanks for, the more that we get,
Mhm.
right? I heard a great quote. It was, "The things you appreciate, appreciate." And like I talked about it on the podcast with Creighton. Is like it works on a few different levels. That when you appreciate something, it appreciates in that now you're focusing on these, and so you see them more, and it will ultimately end up coming more. And when
Mhm.
you give people your appreciation, they appreciate that you appreciated it.
Mhm.
And because you showed them that you appreciate it, now that trait will appreciate.
Mhm. It's so
It's like,
cool, right?
whoa. Yeah. But the most important time for us to be grateful and appreciative is when things aren't going well.
Mhm.
Because I got a roof over my head,
Mhm.
right? I'm talking to you right now.
Mhm.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Right? Maybe something just terrible happened right before, that it wasn't a complete emergency, right, or whatever. But I've got two little boys and another little human on the way. I've got an amazing wife, right? Yeah, so what? I wanted that contract to go through, but it didn't affect this, right? Oh man, that seller screamed at me. I still get to wake up and breathe today,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
Forget the seller. Maybe he was having a really bad day and you just got to call him back tomorrow.
Yeah, you talk about the law of attraction. A couple of books I want to share with you that you might
Yeah,
enjoy.
go with that.
So one is Change Your Paradigm, Change Your Life with Bob Proctor.
Okay.
And the audio version is more of an interview type style. So I have no idea what the actual book is. I don't know if it's different
Okay.
because I've only listened to the audio version. But he talks about the law of attraction and he talks about the law of vibration. And I think you will like that. And then the other one I've been listening to is The Science of Getting Rich by
Okay.
Wallace Waddles. I mean, it was written in like 1913 or something crazy, but it really is, it talks about that gratitude and being grateful for what's coming. We're grateful
Yeah.
for what we have, but being grateful, like, like look at the skills that I'm learning, right? The gap or the gain, right? Look at the skills that I'm learning so that I can grow into that person that I need to be.
Yeah.
Being grateful for those contracts that will be coming in, and putting yourself in that attitude of gratitude is attractive, and you
Yeah.
vibrate on a different frequency and it resonates with others, and I could go on and on, but those
Yeah.
are the
Yeah.
things that are so cool. And when you really start being intentional about that, you see how incredibly different you see things.
Yeah.
Is like you said, that contract falling through, it's frustrating, but when you're thankful for it, like knowing like this wasn't for me for whatever reason, maybe I don't know now, and maybe you'll see it later of why those things happen, and it's just so cool when you start seeing those pieces come together. But as you're attracting that future self that you're looking to be, all
Yeah.
those different pieces start falling together. It's really cool. So,
I like that you mentioned the reason thing, because I am a believer that everything does happen for a reason.
mhm.
I got a little story there.
Love it.
Is we were driving home from a family vacation the other day. I hope my mom's not listening because she'll freak out. But I was getting sleepy,
Mm.
and everybody in the car was asleep. It was like 1 in the afternoon or whatever it was,
Yeah.
and our car has the lane detector, and it'll
Oh,
kind
yeah.
of keep you in the lane. For whatever reason, the lane detector didn't work at this exact moment, and I had fallen. I like just closed my eyes,
Yeah.
and we hit the rumble strip,
Oh, yeah.
like, and it freaked me out. And I was wide awake after that. But
Yeah.
as I'm thinking about it, I'm watching, and the car's working just fine. The lane assist is working just fine, and there all of a sudden there wasn't any rumble strip anymore, and there wasn't a divider, a center divider. I was like, oh man, if that hadn't been working at this moment now, we would
Right.
have been in oncoming traffic, or we could have been in oncoming traffic. Like, it's a little like everything happens for a reason kind of feeling.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I'm not where I want to be, but I'm right where I'm supposed to be.
Yes. And like you said, being that present in that moment and looking at that gain of where I'm at is where I need to be so that I can get to where I'm going. It's such a abundant feeling actually, and versus that lack when you look at the gap, right? But it's
Yeah,
just this feeling of like, man, I can do anything. Like, and it almost propels you forward, like,
yeah, yeah,
oh, makes me happy. I
yeah,
love that. That's so
yeah.
great.
I got the goose
Um,
pimples or
I
the
know, I
goosebumps.
love it. It's so cool. Okay, well, we have been chatting for about an hour. This has been
Yeah,
great. I love this, and I'm looking forward to having you back another time. We'll bring you back,
sure, yeah,
talk about
yeah,
your long term holds that you've got, your big portfolio that you're building, and see where
yeah.
things go. Um, for anyone who is listening who's like, this dude, like I vibrate on that frequency, like I want to get to know him better. Where can people find you?
If you, is my name going to be in the show here that
Oh,
people will easily see it?
yes, it
I
should.
did. I,
It should show up. I
okay.
think it'll
If
show
you
up.
see my name, Nathaniel Hovsepian, if you just type that in, put a www on the front and a .com on the back, that's where you should go to.
Okay.
If you want to follow me on any of the socials, the ones that I'm on will be there. If you want to see the podcast, it's there. If you want to come to Helping Hands Hour, that's there as well. Right? I just tried to make a one-stop shop. It's just a one page. It's not like some intimidating
Oh,
website, but if you go to nathaniel.com or hovsepian.com, you'll see it. Yeah.
perfect. Awesome. So everyone go check him out. Follow him. Go like and subscribe to his YouTube channel right now. Follow him on social. Nathaniel, thank you so much for coming on the
Thank you.
podcast. This has been fantastic. All right, everyone. Until next week, have a good one.